Miss Ndiaye, I think you're muted. If you can please unmute yourself.
Merci beaucoup et désolé pour ce petit souci technique. Bonjour à tous et merci de m'avoir proposé de participer à ce forum. J'ai le grand plaisir de prendre part. Et pour répondre à la première question qui est de savoir quels sont les principaux facteurs qui déterminent la capacité des entreprises à s'adapter de manière proactive, je dirais, à la pandémie. Pour parler du cas de Madagascar, je vais considérer 3 points. Tout d'abord, le niveau un État, avant tout, doit disposer de ressources budgétaires propres suffisantes qui permettraient d'amortir le choc dû à la pandémie liée à la COVID-19. Et en ce qui concerne l'État malgache, la Banque mondiale, pour ne citer que cet exemple, a fourni plusieurs aides à Madagascar, notamment en mars dernier, 150 millions de dollars de financement pour renforcer non seulement les programmes nationaux de protection sociale, mais surtout pour accélérer la riposte en protection sociale face à cette pandémie. Il s'agit notamment de ce qu'on appelle filets sociaux de sécurité au travers d'un dispositif d'octroi de fonds d'aide d'urgence à des familles. On sait que, comme l'a précisé la dernière analyse sur la capacité à rebondir des pays face au choc du Covid, il faut à peu près 4 ans pour récupérer le niveau de produit intérieur brut par habitant d'avant Covid, selon le FMI, dans son World Economic Outlook. Et les filets sécuritaires donc, sont, je dirais, une sorte de bouée de sauvetage dans ce domaine. Au niveau sectoriel, les secteurs d'activité ne sont pas tous logés en même enseigne. Il y a des secteurs qui semblent plus impactés par la crise liée à la COVID-19 à Madagascar et d'autres adopter des mesures d'adaptation rapidement. Parmi les secteurs les plus touchés, je vais citer en premier lieu le secteur touristique à Madagascar. Le secteur touristique qui souffre en fait de la fermeture des frontières aériennes malgaches depuis plus de 18 mois maintenant. 30 000 emplois directs sont concernés, donc ces salariés sont au chômage technique. Il y a eu beaucoup de fermetures d'usines et d'entreprises tout simplement, et le secteur emploie indirectement 150 000 personnes. Donc vous pouvez imaginer l'impact très négatif de la fermeture des frontières, qui est une mesure, on le rappelle, nécessaire actuellement pour endiguer la pandémie et pour maîtriser son avancée à Madagascar. Il y a eu quand même des mesures, je dirais, des politiques d'adaptation qui ont été mises en place par ces entreprises qui sont dans le domaine du tourisme, notamment essayer d'inciter et de faire croître le tourisme local. Pour les restaurateurs, il s'agissait notamment de proposer une livraison à domicile grâce soit à l'utilisation du mobile banking ou au recours à des prestataires qui ont eu de nouveaux prestataires d'ailleurs, et c'est un domaine qui est en train de, je dirais, de croître de façon très rapide à Madagascar, celui de la livraison à domicile, grâce notamment à des entreprises qui se sont installées dans son secteur et à l'utilisation de ce qu'on appelle ici des taxis motos. Par ailleurs, pour les entreprises qui dépendent très fortement des importations, très fortes, ou qui sont insérées dans des chaînes de production mondiales, l'impact est très, très conséquent aussi sur le niveau des activités, surtout pour notamment le secteur de textile-habillement. Le secteur du textile-habillement qui, comme vous le savez tous, emploie de la main-d'œuvre peu qualifiée à très, très grande échelle. Là encore, la capacité d'adaptation dépendait en fait des mesures prises aussi par ces entreprises qui, pour certaines, ont réussi quand même à proposer en fait au marché local des masques fabriqués localement et qui répondent aux normes, notamment AFNOR, l'Agence française des normes, et pour quelques-unes de ces entreprises. Par contre, dans ce domaine, le secteur informel a pu s'adapter plus facilement, étant donné que beaucoup de couturiers et d'artisans malgaches se sont improvisés fabricants et vendeurs de masques du jour au lendemain. Et à Madagascar, par exemple, on n'a pas du tout connu cette crise d'insuffisance ou de pénurie de masques qu'a connue l'Europe, par exemple, au début de la pandémie de Covid-19. On a pu observer aussi que pour permettre à certains acteurs économiques informels de s'adapter rapidement et de se formaliser, le cadre institutionnel et réglementaire mis en place pour répondre à l'urgence sanitaire a pu façonner donc le contexte économique et a pu permettre soit à des startups qui ont vu le jour durant la crise pandémique, soit donc, comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, à des entreprises qui sont jusqu'ici, qui ont été jusque-là, qui ont évolué dans le secteur informel, de se formaliser, de formaliser donc leurs activités grâce notamment à la mise en place d'un système de formalisation en ligne. Donc, il s'agit ni plus ni moins d'une plateforme où les entreprises qui veulent s'installer peuvent assurer, donc peuvent s'inscrire et peuvent formaliser leurs activités de façon très rapide et en ligne, sans qu'elles aient besoin de se déplacer. Du coup, les grands facteurs, je dirais, qui permettent aux entreprises de s'adapter, Madagascar notamment, essentiellement, réside dans cette capacité à s'adapter non seulement aux menaces, mais à la difficulté du marché, le fait de devoir, par exemple, se résoudre à se contenter du marché local qui est assez restreint, mais capacité à offrir de nouveaux services pour le marché et tenir compte donc des nouvelles opportunités offertes, notamment par le numérique, par le fait que l'e-commerce permet de rapprocher la demande et l'offre, et par le fait que le développement du numérique permet aussi de développer en même temps des plateformes, des solutions digitales qui permettent de rencontrer les besoins des consommateurs en général.
Donc, je vous remercie beaucoup, Madame Ndiaye, pour ces détails et cette analyse particulièrement de l'expérience malgache. And I'd like to highlight some of the points that you have made, particularly in terms of the importance of the role of the state, of policies which are put in place, and of the regulatory framework for businesses in order to help them adapt to this external shock, which has been the pandemic, and particularly for recalling us the importance of the role of the informal sector. We know how important this sector is in LDC economies, but also for showing how these companies, both formal and informal, have been capable of adapting, but also new enterprises appearing, but also for the increasing use of these new technologies, digital media, etc. And it's exactly relating to these technological aspects that I'd like to turn to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Nobuya Haraguchi. Mr. Nobuya Haraguchi is the Chief of Research and Industrial Policy Advice Division of UNIDO, so the United Nations Industrial Development Organization in Vienna. He leads UNIDO's research and industrial policy work. He has published extensively in books and academic journals. And before joining UNIDO, he taught macroeconomics at St. John's Universities in the United States. And I'd like to start or to ask him that many have argued that COVID-19 accelerated the advent of the so-called fourth industrial revolution and the digitalization of business, which is an area in which UNIDO has done extensive research. In this context, and keeping in mind emerging trends such as digitalization and servicification, what role can the manufacturing play in the recovery of LDCs? So, Mr. Haraguchi, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rolf. We, UNIDO, are very happy to co-organize this important event. And Rolf, you asked a very important question, role of industrialization and digitalization. And at the beginning, as you said, this structural transformation, which is going on in LDCs in Asia and Africa, COVID-19 can reverse the trend or can accelerate the trend. And with regard to this point, industrialization and digitalization can play important role. Just to illustrate my point, let me share my screen. So we know that COVID had a profound social economic impact all over the world. The world had lost GDP outputs by 3.2% in 2020, and more than 250 million people lost jobs. And there are many, of course, heterogeneous impacts across countries, and different factors amplified or reduced the crisis impact. Overall level, of course, the level of severity of pandemic and containment measures countries imposed had impact on the differences of the COVID impact. And channels of impact, supply and demand. Supply side, what kind of goods and services countries produce, whether they are integrated in global value chains or they demanded during the COVID period, like health-related products, or whether they are labor-intensive industries, which had more impact during the COVID, and also the demand, customers' preference, and so on, have also made difference in terms of the COVID impacts. And country level, at the macro level, country integration in global economy, government policies, industrial capabilities make difference, and also manufacturing sector structure, whether the country had more vulnerable sectors, such as labor-intensive industries, like wearing apparel industries, or whether they had a more robust sectors, like high-tech industries, capital-intensive industries. And also farm characteristics, farm size, GBC integration, level of digitalization, human capitals and technological capabilities. All these factors make difference in terms of farm resilience, which can be defined as robustness, ability to survive or maintain operation, or readiness, ability to implement strategic changes or adapt to new situations. And among all these factors, we conducted analysis based on the data and industrial capabilities and level of digitalization. They especially made difference in terms of how countries cope with this crisis. Here we see projected output growth on the vertical axis and share of manufacturing in GDP on horizontal axis. As you can see, there's a negative relation. Larger manufacturing sector associated with lower output. And here we see Asian LDCs and African LDCs. Due to their lower share of manufacturing in their GDP, they had relatively high level of output loss by 2021. And Asian LDC had more negative impact than African LDCs, mainly due to Asian LDCs were more integrated into global value chains. We witnessed supply chain disruptions. And overall, digitally advanced farms were more robust to the impact of the crisis. We conducted a farm-level survey in 30 countries across developing regions, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And as you can see, regardless of the level of digitalization, these developed countries' farms were more affected. But digitally advanced farms suffered less than the rest in terms of changes in sales and changes in profit. And based on our survey, it seems that COVID-19 have accelerated the trend towards digitalization. And around 54% of the survey African LDCs said that they started or increased business activity online. And that was 31% for Asian LDCs. And 6% of African LDC countries' farms, surveyed farms, said that they introduced new equipment for automation. And that was 12% for Asian LDCs. And as you see, these percentages are lower than the farms in emerging industrial economies in corresponding regions. And of course, these percentages are much lower than the farms in industrialized economies. So COVID-19 might have accelerated the trend of digitalization, but also it might have further widened the digital divide. And learning through industrial production is essential to make the best of new technologies. We investigated what kind of capabilities are necessary to adapt new process innovation. There are essentially two kinds. One is investment and technology capabilities, which you can acquire through markets, like by purchasing new equipment, hiring experts, or linking up with universities. And another capability is the production capabilities, which you can acquire through learning inside the farm by accumulating experience, learning by doing. And what we have found is that production capability is much more important than investment capability. This accumulation of experience. Of course, if you can combine these two capabilities, firms tend to reach higher level of adoption of new process technologies. So in terms of policy actions needed for LDC countries especially, there are three areas: building framework conditions, fostering demand and adoption, and strengthening capabilities. And building framework conditions, in order to adopt advanced digital production technologies, developing framework conditions along three dimensions would be important: regulations and digital infrastructure, investment in physical infrastructure. Unless you have internet connection, broadband connection, it's very hard to develop the adapt the technologies. And institutional infrastructure, policy formulation process. It's important to have public-private partnership consultation, interministerial consultation, to have high-quality policies for digital adoption. And international collaboration and technology transfer, because these technologies are often developed and exported by developed countries. So screen share has been stopped, but I can continue. So technology transfer is important because these technologies are developed in industrialized economies. So partnership with industrialized economy is important. And also awareness building. Often farmers are not aware with the available technologies and how to adapt, how to apply these technologies for their production. And special support for the vulnerable farmers like SME, informal farms, especially important. And finally, needless to say, investment, improvement of human capital skills and technological capabilities are very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haraguchi, for sharing with us the results of UNIDO's research, which do confirm that there has definitely been an acceleration of technological change following the outbreak of the pandemic, but also some type of selection, in the sense that those firms which were already more digitalized in terms of their business models, in terms of their technologies, in terms of their marketing channels, etc., they were more capable of weathering the effects of the pandemic. But also for showing us how this differential impact between the firms which are more digitalized and less digitalized has played out both in emerging and what we call other developing countries, but also in LDCs, and for sharing with us also the broad three areas of policy action which needs to be taken for adaptation, but also, I suppose, looking more into the future. So I will go through another round of interventions by our panelists, and I will draw on some questions which have been shared by us. And I'll start with a question to Mr. Chowdhury. So the question is, what do you see as your biggest policy challenge challenges once Bangladesh graduates from LDC status. So we all know that this year Bangladesh was recommended for graduation from LDC status after a period of transition of 5 years, which means that it's scheduled to graduate in 2026. So you mentioned the TRIPS exemption, which has been important for the development of the Bangladeshi pharmaceutical industry. So how do you see going forward, if you look towards the medium to long term, as the biggest challenges to the Bangladeshi pharmaceutical industry once the process of transition, of graduation out of the category is fully completed? We all know there are discussions ongoing here in the WTO about possibly prolonging this transition period, but eventually this transition period will be over. So how do you see the perspectives of the Bangladeshi pharmaceutical industry going forward? So, Mr. Chowdhury, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, the top 10 industry, I think already they have taken the measures, understanding that after 2026, we are hoping that still will be great. This will have a few more years. If not, if this is not the case, surely the small company, those who are 100% depending on producing their products for the domestic consumption, they will face a very difficult time because of the competition and all. But for our larger companies, like ours, we already have presence in a different event to the developed countries also. So naturally, but for the patented product, it's not going to be the same. But those who have those already started manufacturing the off-patent products for those countries, from the regulated countries to the ROW, the rest of the world, and the European countries, many of the African countries, and I can talk about even our own company that we are already putting up a pharmaceutical plant already. It's within the next 2 months' time, it's going to operation in Nairobi. So a couple of companies are also now going out of the countries, for their survival. So we are not only thinking about a small country as Bangladesh, but we also feel that the experience that we have already gathered, the technology that we have, the expertise that we already have, we can surely, use this experience in other countries also.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chowdhury, for your reply, which mentions both the differential impact of graduation on different type of companies, whether these are large companies or whether these are SMEs, but also very interesting, the strategy of internationalization. I suppose this refers to rather to the larger companies to take advantage of either market access or regulatory regimes prevailing in other countries as an adaptation strategy to this changing regulatory regimes, which will eventually take place in Bangladesh once the process of graduation is completed. Maintenant, j'ai une question qui vient du public pour Madame Ndiaye. La question dit, vous avez mentionné que certaines entreprises réussissaient à produire des masques pour l'exportation selon les normes internationales françaises ou autres. Quel est pour vous le rôle des normes et des politiques publiques relatives à l'infrastructure et à la qualité des infrastructures à Madagascar dans l'accompagnement de la reprise de la COVID-19 et que fait-on pour améliorer l'adoption et l'utilisation des normes, donc normes de qualité, etc., à Madagascar? Madame Ndiaye, à vous.
Je vous remercie pour cette question. Je nuance la réponse, en fait, enfin, le propos de la personne qui a posé cette question. Les masques qui ont été produits à Madagascar selon les normes AFNOR étaient destinés au marché malgache. Mais je vais quand même répondre au rôle des normes sur la capacité d'un État ou des entreprises à faire face à la crise de la Covid. Pour moi, il semblerait que de façon générale et de façon systématique, la mise aux normes de nos productions locales, que ce soit à Madagascar ou dans les pays d'Afrique en général, doit être un facteur essentiel. Et cette problématique de la standardisation, non seulement des produits, des procédés, est une réelle problématique dans nos pays les moins avancés. Autrement dit, à partir du moment où une entreprise donnée ne peut pas fournir de façon stable et pérenne la même qualité de produit, elle ne peut pas être viable, être pérenne, non seulement au niveau local, mais aussi elle ne peut pas se tourner vers l'exportation. Quand on s'insère, par exemple, quand on veut proposer des produits pour les marchés internationaux, la première des conditions et la première barrière à l'entrée sur ces marchés sont les normes. Autrement dit, l'État doit pouvoir, avec l'appui des organismes de formation, doivent pouvoir proposer en fait des dispositifs de montée en compétence non seulement de nos techniciens au niveau local, mais aussi former des spécialistes dans chaque domaine d'activité qui accompagneraient la montée en compétence de toute l'économie vers la normalisation non seulement des produits, mais aussi des procédés. On peut également s'appuyer sur les agences spécialisées. À Madagascar, il y a une agence spécialisée, mais qui doit également s'appuyer sur, dans un premier temps, et on ne peut pas s'en affranchir, de l'expertise des pays qui sont plus avancés dans cette question et cette problématique de la normalisation. Je pense qu'à partir du moment où l'économie peut proposer des produits selon les normes attendues par les marchés étrangers, l'économie tout entière va profiter de cette upgrading, de cette montée en compétences qui dépend fortement non seulement de la capacité à acquérir les compétences nécessaires, mais aussi de la capacité à les faire développer et à aller vers un peu plus d'innovation.
Je vous remercie pour votre réponse, Madame Ndiaye. So it was very interesting how it was recalled the role of technical standards, product standards, but also production process standards, but also the need for upgrading both of productive units, of companies, of manufacturing units, but how this also puts a requirement on human resources, on technical resources, on specialists, etc., and the importance of public policies in ensuring this type of upgrading, both of capabilities, production capabilities, but also skills, knowledges, etc., and how everything needs to co-evolve. And now we are coming close to the end of our session. I'd like to turn to Nobuya Haraguchi again, and I'd like to ask him, what are the main challenges that you see in relation to LDC's industrialization objectives and to the aspiration of bridging the digital divide? Mr. Haraguchi, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think the LDC's industrialization, there are a couple of important things, especially in this time of the pandemic. To move way forward, first, countries need to distinguish between short-term and long-term effect of disaster. As for short-term, of course, farms are suffering and there are vulnerable workers, and countries need to pay special attention for the survival of SMEs and to contain layoffs, wage cuts of the vulnerable workers, including women and youth and informal workers. But for the medium to long term, to progress the agenda of industrialization, countries start putting more efforts on diversification and reskilling of the workers, and also make use of the experience of the COVID as an opportunities. Some countries might have been successful for repurposing some of the production and expand, for example, healthcare industries, which can address both the health problem and economic strengthen the economies. And also, core issue is the industrial policy formation process. Multi-stakeholder approach is very important for policy making to make the high quality policies. Public-private sector consultation, as I said, interministerial coordination is crucial. We can have the well-written policies on the table, but if it's not consulted with relevant stakeholders, often the implementation of the policy is slow. And finally, I'd say multilateralism and international coordination is crucial. One country alone cannot address disaster like this and cannot help countries to move forward for industrialization. We have witnessed the problem of global value chains, supply chain disruptions, and we need to make sure fair distribution of protective personal equipment and vaccine production. All these issues, we need to work together, and multilateralism, international coordination will be important for the industrialization of LDCs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nobuya. So as I said, we are coming to the close of this session. So I'd like just to recall some common points which have come across the different experiences and that we have heard about this in this session, and also as a take-home message, the importance of using COVID as an opportunity. No one is denying the strength of the shock that this has represented, particularly for the LDC companies, but also to the importance of economic agents to adapt, be it governments, be it local, well, I mean, national governments, be it local companies. And the experiences that we have seen have shown that there is the capability of LDC LDC companies to adapt to such a huge external shock as has been the case of COVID, but also that this capacity to adapt is not equal among different companies, that this depends a lot in terms of the initial size of the company, the sector in which the company was operating to start with, but also the extent, the previous extent of technology adoption. And finally, looking forward, the crucial role that policies play, including both domestic policy in terms of support to the domestic entrepreneurial sector, of establishing dialogue between the public and the private sector, in terms of upgrading the skills, both of technicians, of the companies themselves, but also of the population at large, also in terms of TVET and technical training, etc., but also in terms of international policies and the role of international cooperation, in terms of skills upgrading, in terms of facilitating technology transfer towards LDCs. And this echoes something that we also call for in UNCTAD's LDC report 2021. This report calls for a new generation of international support measures in support of LDCs in the context of the adoption of the new program of action for the LDCs for the decade 2022 to 2031. And we call the importance which we recall rather the importance which should be given not only to the financing dimension, financing for development, but also for the technological dimension and importance of building up and strengthening the technological capabilities of LDCs, and the crucial role which international development partners of LDCs, which these international development partners have to play. So as we bring this session to a close, I'd like to thank you all for your presence, either physically or virtually. And I'd like to, above all, to thank very much our co-organizers, so the permanent representation of Bangladesh in Geneva to the WTO and to the UN, but also our colleagues from UNIDO. We have appreciated very much your collaboration in the bringing to fruition this session. And with these words, I bring this session to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you.